Hey, everybody. This is Mike, and welcome to Recovery is Possible with Mike and Lily. And you can see that I am dressed for the snow. We are going to get pummeled with a snowstorm here tonight, and I'm getting ready to get on an airplane to beat the snows to get out to Ohio and talk about addiction at a trauma conference for first responders. And so I just wanted to throw out a quick podcast to you guys today because, we're always thinking about recovery. We're always prioritizing our recovery and want to talk about why that's important and some of the things that you can do to stay focused on recovery before I leave. So again, thank you for joining us. And, if you're listening to this podcast, I know this topic is important to you. It's important to people around you. And this is just so important for our country. So I was at a meeting today, and the topic of resentments came up. And I think that that's a very, very good topic because, as you know, the number one reason why people go out and relapse is because of resentments. And the AA literature talks about this quite a bit, and in recovery circles and in therapy, we talk about this, that resentments are the number one killer of addicts and alcoholics, and we have to address that. And, I think that part of that is, if you think about it, people like us are actually very, very sensitive people, very sensitive. Now, at first glance, it doesn't really come across as that way because if you've ever been to a 12-step meeting, the fact is that, people are very gregarious. They're large personalities. They seem to be happy. People tell stories, and we kind of laugh at, these stories because we kind of learn in recovery to be able to laugh at ourselves. Now, if you've ever been to an Al-Anon meeting, that's exactly the opposite. There's no laughter. There's no people having a good time. That's just not happening because people in Al-Anon meetings and support groups have been victimized by the behavior of those of us that have engaged in our addiction. And so it's a very different type of thing. But where does that come from? I think it's important for us to be able to laugh at our actions of the past and to be able to just think of how crazy it is. And I think that's where the laughter comes from. It's just like, wow, that was just so crazy, the way I was thinking, what I was doing. And I think it's important to really think about that in a way that it's like, I don't ever want that to happen again. And I think sometimes that's mistaken as joy. It's not really joy. I think it's just our way of being able to reflect. Now, the literature tells us that we suffer from a complex, and that complex being that we are tremendous egos, that we are egomaniacs with an inferiority complex. And let me kind of break that down a little bit because that seems like sort of a dichotomy, doesn't it? We are egomaniacs with an inferiority complex. Well, the fact is we have huge egos, but to a great extent, we also have low self-esteem. We feel like we're posers in life. We feel like we don't fit. We don't belong. And I think many people can relate to that. I hear about this a lot at meetings. And what happens is that our drugs and alcohol help us to sort of try to realize that ego that we think that we should have. But in reality, we're people with very low self-esteem. And as a result of that, we tend to be very sensitive people if you think about it. And when you come into recovery, that's one of the things that we learn is that we're highly sensitive people, probably more sensitive than most. And we have to address that issue because if we don't address that issue, then there's a very good chance we're going to go out and use again. And when you work the 12 steps in particular, remember, drugs and alcohol are only mentioned in the first step. I'm powerless over alcohol or drugs, whatever your case may be. I'm powerless over alcohol and drugs. My life's become unmanageable. Everything after that is you learning to live life on life's terms. So whatever comes at you, it's part of life. That's the way that it is. And we have to become adapted or properly adapted in dealing with the things that happen in life. Maybe you have a death. Maybe you go through a life change. Maybe you discover you have an illness, a serious illness. Maybe you don't like your boss. Maybe your spouse is bothering you. Those are things that everybody goes through. We just aren't very well adapted at dealing with those things. And so we have to become adept at dealing with them. And in one of those things that we really are not well adapted with is those resentments and being rubbed the wrong way by other people, being very sensitive. And that's something that we have to focus on. And when you come into recovery, it's important to have that single-minded focus on your recovery and kind of to the exclusion of everything and everyone else, meaning those people that are critical of you, not getting wrapped up in your own head and thinking about how people are critical of something that you're doing. And I've learned this the hard way, actually. I've learned this the hard way. Doing this podcast, for example, is one of those things. If you have never done a podcast or if you've never put yourself out in the public light, you probably have not experienced this to this particular degree. And what I mean by that is when you go out and you put videos like this out, podcasts out, or you're in the public realm in any way, you're going to be subject to criticism. And I know that I've had my fair share of that. And I remember the first time that I saw a comment that I took as being negative, it changed my mood. It changed my attitude. I was pretty upset about that. And I had a friend of mine say to me, Mike, if you're going to go out there in public and you're going to do that, you're going to have to get used to people being critical of you. That's just par for the course. That's part of the business. And if you're going to do that, then get used to it. If you can't get used to it, then I would suggest that you stop doing what you're doing right now. And I remember my sponsor actually said to me one time, remember, Mike, what other people think of you is none of your business. And I thought that that was a wise saying, and it's something to be very aware of. And I think what happens in recovery is you have to understand what your mission is. Your number one priority every single day in recovery, if you're somebody in recovery, is you wake up and your number one priority is to be sober for that day. You do not have a higher priority than that. Being with the kids, being with your spouse, going to work, that actually is not the highest priority. Because if you don't maintain your sobriety, any of those things that you put before your recovery, you're going to lose anyway. So you've got to make recovery your number one priority. And when you stay focused on that, now part of recovery is working with other people and helping other people stay sober, because there's this really amazing phenomenon. And that phenomenon is that when we are working to help other people get well and get sober, the amazing thing is it helps us as much, if not more, than it helps them. Because when you're helping people with their problems, you tend to focus less on your problems. And that's important. That's very, very important in recovery, because whenever we get out of our head and help other people, then that helps us focus on what's important, and that is sobriety in general, specifically helping that person. But guess what? We're no longer up in our own head dwelling on our own problems. And that's important because, again, the more and more we focus on our problems, we develop resentments towards other people, and then we tend to drink and drug at that person. If you think about it, you're angry, so you drink. You drink hoping that this problem will be taken care of. You're drinking at that person. You're drinking at that problem. But your drinking just creates more problems for yourself and then more resentments, and then you start that whole cycle again. So it's very, very important for us to not do that. Now, what's interesting is that as we do this, and as you become focused on other people focused, outwardly focused, what it does is it begins to change you. It begins to change how you are, and you have that metaphysical change, that spiritual change, that transformation. And what's funny is you can see people that first come into the program, and you see them, and I've had the blessing of being able to see people in early recovery. I mean, like day one in recovery, and then see them years later. And it's amazing how different that person is. They've had that spiritual, that metaphysical change, that critical change. And oftentimes, not only do they think differently, they speak differently, much more mature, but they even sometimes physically look different. There's just something about those that have had not only the healing of the mind and the body, but the spirit is important as well. And when people have had that spiritual transformation, everything about them, their aura, even their physical being changes, And that's just such a blessing to experience if you've ever experienced that. You stick around in recovery long enough, you will see that. And when you see that in people, you become a real, true person that's committed to recovery, and it wants you to stay in recovery and to help other people because you see it. You see that. Look, and it's not even, I don't even want to say religious experience. For many of us, that is a religious experience, but I say a spiritual experience. And when you experience what I'm describing in another person, it's undeniable. That spiritual aspect of recovery is absolutely undeniable. Anybody in long-term recovery will tell you that, whether you're religious or not. There is some sort of a transformation that takes place, and it's a beautiful thing to see when you see it. And as you're doing that, you start having gratitude. You start having that, I heard somebody describe it as vitamin G. It's almost like a vitamin, that gratitude vitamin. And it's not something that you buy. It's not something that you put in your body. It's just having gratitude every day for the fact that you have achieved another day of sobriety, that somehow, for some reason, you were saved from this horrendous disease that so many people will die from. Far more people will die from this disease than will get well from it. And for some reason, you were picked by whatever power there is to get this when others can't. There's others that just have those blinders on, those scales on their eyes, that for whatever reason, they just will not allow themselves to understand the simple concepts that it takes to get well. And, folks, I'm thinking about all of you. I'm thinking about, how you're getting well, and I want to hear about your journey. Reach out to us. Let us know how you're doing. If you have a topic that you want covered, we can do that as well. But I wanted to check in with each and every one of you this week because every one of you is a blessing to me. You help me in my sobriety, and I hope that some of the things that we talk about here are helping you. And I will see you next week. We'll get through this storm that's coming. If you're on the East Coast of the United States, it's going to be pretty nasty starting tonight. And I did want to just check in with you real quick, and we'll see all of you. And thank you for joining this family, this recovery family. And we can do this because recovery is possible. You all take care. God bless, and I'll see you soon. So as I always like to say, I do not represent any group, do not represent anyone other than myself. My only purpose in giving this information is to share with you what I've done because it's helped me and maybe it will help you too. If I've said something that does not apply to you or you don't agree with, then just discard it. But try to take any information that you can use for yourself and help others as well. That's what we do in recovery. We help ourselves along the way, and we hope to impart the knowledge we have gained to others as well. With that, please visit our Facebook page, Recovery is Possible, and our website, VanMeterWellnessSolutions.com. Let us know how we're doing, and let us know if there's any topic that you're interested in hearing about. We'd love to hear from you, and take care, and we'll see you next time.